Understand what black is, the source from which all things come, the security blanket for the stars. Understand what black is. It's not a color, it's the basis of all colors. It is not a complexion, it is a reflection of all complexions called human.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home on community radio.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning to Harry. That's our station manager, and he's working from home today. And I just kind of mentioned that I'd like to shout out Harry whether he's in the studio on Elm Street or at home or wherever he is on the planet. He's always pushing the buttons and keeping the shows moving. So Harry, kind of, a shout out to you and have a great weekend. And he and I always talk a little bit before the show comes on about commiserating with our young age and our knees and our backs and our hips. And, although we mention these things, it's still a blessing to be able to talk about them, to be able to be aware that we might be in a little pain. And, but sometimes pain kind of indicates what joy is also in terms of that dichotomy. And we're going to talk a little bit today about life's bad times and good times, and how you perceive those episodes could kind of influence your remembrance of it, your belief in it. Sometimes these episodes give you some guide points about what your next step or your next crawl or your next swim might be. The title of this show today is Passages from the Universe. Passages from the Universe, and really blessed to have Melki Russell, the author of Passages from the Universe, with us. And it's really unraveling the kind of a subtitle is Unraveling the Mystery of Life's Bad Times. Unraveling the Mystery of Life's Bad Times. Melki, good morning.
Good morning, Tom.
We're going to wade through some topics here in terms of why you are the only person who really matters, fear and pain, external versus internal selves, and the illusion of our internal selves. And I love talking to you, Melki, because people, when they see me, they understand I really wade in the water of philosophy and beliefs and system stuff, although they know I also keep my feet on the ground somewhat. But talking to you kind of enables me to really let it pour, let it unravel, let it flow in terms of this mystery, the mystery of life, and when really the mystery of ourselves. So let's jump right in. Now we're going to, again, the Youniverse is available on Melki's website, and we'll give you that in a second. Also, it's on Amazon. But why you are the only person who really matters? Why you are the only person who really matters? Melki, kind of talk to me a little bit about why you've decided to kind of for us to kick it off in this vein.
Sure, Tom. People have said, numerous times, and you hear from a lot of different people that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And as spiritual beings having a physical experience, as you just mentioned, there are two aspects to our existence. One is physical and one is spiritual or energetic, depending on how you want to call it. And as you realize, the needs are not quite the same, but they are equal in terms of we need to be able to engage in that spiritual aspects of life, the energetic aspects of life, the same way we need things physically, the same way we need food, we need spiritual food, we need energetic food, the same way we need exercise. We need to be able to delve into those topics in a way that allows us to realize the true extent of who we really are. And it's not just physical. A lot of times people use the term metaphysical, greater than. So our experience is not just a physical experience, it is a greater than physical. It's a combination of spiritual beings having a physical exercise, and thus the individual themselves And the way I look at it is that the individual themselves experiences life, physical manifestation, for a purpose, and that purpose is what dictates and determines our life, and so each individual is unique. Oftentimes, on the surface level, we have systems of belief, systems of religion. We have social structures. You grow up in a particular community, a particular way, and people tell you these are the values, the mores, these are the taboos of this community. This is how you are expected to act. This is how you are expected to be. But at some point, most individuals realize that, okay, that I don't really fit in here. That doesn't really describe all of me. You know, and so a lot of times we're pushing our head against the wall to try to fit this circle into this square peg, because we have the perimeters that people have established about life and about how we're supposed to engage and how we're supposed to handle situations. But yet that strategy that worked for my friend doesn't seem to work for me. And when I was young, you know, I was viewed as a pretty quiet individual when I was young, and I did a lot of reading. And I tell people, that's my excuse now when I talk too much, is that I spent the first 30 years of my life listening to people, listening to everybody's opinion, everybody, you know, giving me advice, and the advice was coming from a good place because they really wanted to see me do well and to be successful. So the advice was always coming from a good place, and I appreciate, you know, those people that tried to steer me in a particular direction. But what I noticed was that, okay, I did exactly what you said, and it doesn't work for me. You know, my mother would give me advice, and I would try that, and I said, well, Mom, that didn't really work for me. And so as you're going through life, taking the input from different people and, you know, appreciating where it's coming from, appreciating the good things that they're trying to do, and inherit in that advice, you know, you start realizing that you've got to create your own algorithm in terms of life. So I can take that recipe you gave me for life, and I have to begin to tweak it in order so that it resonates with me. Because maybe you were a doctor, maybe you were an attorney, and everybody's in our family has been attorneys for 3 generations. Maybe I want to do work in that same line that you're doing in terms of protecting people against injustices and correcting wrongs, but I don't like law. Maybe I like art. And so I want to use my art as an expression of the struggle for freedom, as opposed to being a lawyer. So this is why I say, you know, we are the most important individual, because it is the unraveling of who we are that helps us understand life and understand our particular purpose. And this is why I say it's important not to judge anyone else, but also the fact that we're incapable of judging ourselves.
Oh, no. You got to break that down a little bit more.
Yeah, we're incapable of judging ourselves and other people, because, as I said, in this manifestation, this physical manifestation thing, where we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, we've got to learn the whole history. We got to know the timeline. You know, maybe in this physical manifestation thing, maybe I'm an old soul, maybe you're a new soul. So maybe you're trying to replicate what I'm doing, and I'm telling you, dude, it's not possible, because I did what you did 300 lifetimes ago. So you comparing yourself to me, it would be a huge mistake, because you might be you might be looking at it as I'm the advanced student, but you might really be the advanced student. And that you're doing in one lifetime what it took me 3 to do. Yet you're judging yourself, by these by my standards. But as I say in my book, the universe is not going to allow us to be the smartest C student in the class forever. So we at some point the universe is going to say, well, you've been sitting back in the class for 300 lifetimes. It's time for you to show what you know now, to apply what you know to this lifetime. And that's why I say, it's important not to judge other people, even to judge yourself, because you got to kind of be able to calculate the algorithm that describes how long you've been manifesting, how long you've had these experiences, your environment, the resources you have, the resources that you don't have, and of course your destiny. Which in African spiritual traditions, your destiny is really based on your previous existences. So, and we see it through families. We see, the father who's an NBA player, and then his son comes, and the son is an NBA player, and then they have the grandchildren are great athletes. So it's built in over different lifetimes, and looking at what your destiny is. So your destiny may be to do a particular thing, and that may not be my destiny. I wanted to play in the NBA, but that was not my destiny. But how many people in the NBA can write like I write?
And for folks to kind of understand the truth of what you just said, the Youniverse is on Amazon, and it's Youniverse by Unraveling the Mystery of Life's Bad Times by Melki J.K. Russell. Melki, talk to me about, for someone that might not believe in reincarnation or generational pass through, just about in a common way about why it's not really advantageous to judge somebody else.
Right, because even if you ascribe to a different belief system, you live, you die, you go to heaven or some other place a little bit warmer, depending on what you believe. But looking at each individual, what are your particular talents and skills? And they may not be the same across the board as someone else. It's the same way of looking at someone who is 5'9" and comparing them, as their ability to dunk with someone who's 6'7". There's a difference in terms of the resources that you have available, and also part of it is the humility aspect in terms of understanding individuals and what we go through as human beings. So and I sometimes say to people, we have to have some humility and leave some grace for other individuals. Like, maybe I don't understand this person, and because they don't think like me. They don't act like me. You always hear guys say, oh, if I was him, I would do this. Or if I was, but maybe you don't know the whole story in terms of why this person is responding in the way that they're responding, because 99% of the time, individuals, even down to animals that roam the earth, they're acting out of logic. There's nobody running around really doing things illogically. Maybe their logic doesn't make sense to you, but it makes sense to them. And so in the sense of the interactive universe, if you're intent upon judging other people based on things you don't understand about them, what I say is that the universe will allow you to eventually understand them. And the only way to understand somebody is to walk in their shoes. So by judging other people, you position yourself in a place where the universe will give you insight into why they are who they are, or why they do things the way that they do. And you will have experiences. You'll be like, okay, now I get it. And I try to stay away from that because I'm like, I don't want that person's experience. I have to accept them for who they are. And that's it. I may not agree with them, but I have to accept them for who they are. Otherwise, I gain insight, whether you call it the universe, the universe, or whether you call it God, is going to provide me with that experience that will bring me that knowledge, that I sought. And that's why I said we have to give people room, give people grace. We don't have to agree with everything, but I can't really judge you unless I've walked in your shoes.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the word logic, and I was fascinated by that. Talk a little bit about, because I mean, someone will know that I shouldn't. I'll spend a umpteen amount of money on a pack of cigarettes, and even the words will say that, you know what, these things might not be good for me, but I'll still kind of indulge in them. So the person, what kind of logic is a person manifesting when they participate in what ostensibly might be destructive manifestations of their behavior?
Right. And once again, returning to the theme, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And so if you just touch things on a superficial level, then that leads to judgment, it leads to misunderstanding, not understanding people's logic. But if you go a little bit deeper, then that takes you to a place of understanding. As when I was growing up in New Haven, I grew up, in the projects in Ashman Street, and it was heaven at times, and it was hell at times. So it was all these different experiences, a cornucopia of different experiences that were the highest and the lowest, and it was tough at times. You met people that that took advantage of other people, that possibly brutalized other people, and you develop kind of a sense of resentment and anger towards those people, because of the way that they treated you, the way that they engaged you. And sometimes that resentment can carry on a lifetime, but as I started understanding the world more and understanding myself more, I started asking myself questions instead of judging them in anger and holding on to that resentment. I asked myself, what would make them do what they did? And at that point, I was trying to understand their logic. What would make this person be this type of person, always taking advantage of someone, mistreating everybody, and what would cause them to do that? And as I began to really look deeper, I started seeing certain things that made me understand their logic, because I was operating from my logic, whereas these things, I had this level of stability. I had these different resources. And for me, my biggest resource growing up poor in a rough environment was my mind. So I realized at an early age that, okay, I had something going on here. I realized
something of value.
What'd you say?
Something of value.
Yeah, and I realized it was too real, because growing up in the projects, it's funny now because I talk about space and other stuff like that, theoretical stuff. But growing up in the projects, you're kind of dealing with reality. A lot of people come in and have good ideas, like, as Mike Tyson says, you have a good strategy and then you get hit in the jaw. And that strategy kind of disappears. So growing up in the projects was like that. You had to deal with things at face value. And so I was in situations where that were not good. And I learned that I could talk myself out of those situations. And so that was a resource I had that maybe my best friend didn't have, So, and maybe his resource was the fact that he had 16 people in his family. And they were like a gang, that was his resource. I didn't have that. And I didn't have an older brother. So I had to kind of learn how to navigate the world on my own. I had to learn how to be responsible for all of the situations I got into, and also be able to get out of those situations. But those are resources that I had. The next person may not have had those same skills or abilities, but, causing me to look at other people and to see how they act. I saw, okay, well, maybe I look at them differently if I was in the situation they were in. You know,
So are you saying that some folks might participate in negative behaviors because that's consistent because that's consistent with their logical approach to life?
it's consistent in the fact that, okay, if this individual is getting his behind whooped every day by a parent, why would they be in a good mood?
Mm, mm,
You know, if they don't have enough food to eat, why would they be in a good mood? Why would they share? If they don't have any money and these other things are happening, nothing, these other things that we take for granted or we took for granted or just assumed that everybody had, or you could be in a situation where there's verbal abuse and people are just tearing you down emotionally every day.
mm.
And so nobody knows about that. They just see the person that comes outside and then has to interact with the rest of the world. And so this is why we have to take it a step further. We can't just look at individuals and say, "Oh yeah, well, I wouldn't do that." If I was in that situation, we got to say, well, what causes? As I got older, because I'm an inquisitive person, I started saying, well, what would cause this person to do this particular thing? And for me, that became the greater lesson, understanding what caused them as opposed to why would they do something like that. So that became the greater lesson to me, just really understanding like whether I agree with it or not, whether I liked it or not. Like if somebody does something, I just want to know like why would they do something? And then once I understand, I'm good. So I think that's the steps we have to take to better understand people and the whole thing about judgment.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Melki J.K. Russell is with us, and the Youniverse book is available on Amazon. Youniverse. Really urge you to take a look at it. It's very thought provoking. It's worth sharing. And it's worth discussing with other people. You write, Melki, in one of the passages that the thin line between love and hate becomes even thinner, simply because they did not respond, and you referenced that earlier. But I'm just enthralled with the phrase when your conjecture that the thin line between love and hate becomes even thinner. What's going on there from your standpoint?
Right. Because we're talking love and hate, we're talking emotions, but we're also talking energies, and so we're talking polarities. Love, hate. So we're talking different levels of the same energy, different polarities manifesting in different polarities. So one polarity is hate, one polarity is love. And so it's a fine line, literally, because as they travel along those polarities, they get closer and closer together and harder to understand. And because the people that we love, there's so much emotion is involved in that, that cachet of emotion, once it goes left, it carries so much force. It carries all the force that the love contained in it. It takes that to the other side, which is hate. And a lot of times that comes from misunderstanding. As we talked about earlier, misunderstanding people's logics, misunderstanding people's their take on life that differs, that differs from yours. So part of it is just trying to understand people better and trying to understand people's logic, because the main thing that as human beings we experience oftentimes is we want reciprocation for whatever it is, reciprocity. That's in the ancient Egyptian belief system, Mayat, reciprocity. So we seek, if I give, I seek that you're going to give back. And we kind of had a thing growing up in the projects and the PJs where, with the guys of us that hung in groups and cliques, and usually they were age-based cliques. Like in my particular clique I grew up with, there were maybe 10 guys around our age. So we had a deep clique, that, they grew up 225 Ashman, so, but it was there were certain things, like now they talk about the bro code or whatever, the brother code. There were certain things and rules that we lived by, and whereas, it was like the lookout. If I had, you had, and then when I don't have, you have, and so I have. and keeping it, 50 or 100, like that. And so those are the rules that we live by. Now imagine that within a family, and imagine that within friends, and imagine that over time. Whereas you're upholding what you believe is the code, but your family, your peeps are not.
Mm.
So you're giving when they don't have, but when they get, they're not giving nothing back.
Mm-hmm.
When they get, they going off to the Bahamas. So, and so over decades, you're giving and giving, and you're thinking, well, the way this is supposed to work in the world, and what I've been taught is that, and a lot of times we do things because, not necessarily because it's always coming from the heart. We do things kind of as a safeguard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give this now because maybe one day I don't have this, and somebody will do the same for me. Maybe, so I'm gonna help, but more as a safeguard than saying, this is straight up. I see this person as, as a supreme being. I see this person as a God in the flesh, and living on that level and understanding it from that perspective. And so if I can help them avoid hurt, then let me do something about it. Same way, we see little children going the wrong way, and we stop them and say, no, this is,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes we do things because we're looking, because in our mind, it's that quid pro quo, the idea of karma, that borders on the idea of reciprocity. There's not really true reciprocity, but we think it's going to save our behind in the long run.
Mm.
And we're in trouble, and when things don't go well for us, somebody will come through because I've made these donations over the years. And then when it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen back, that's when the resent develops, the anger, the hate develops, because we bought into the contract. We did everything that was supposed to be done, everything they told us to do. And yet when we're getting ready to lose our apartment, we're getting ready to lose our car, where are these people at?
Mm.
These people that loved me to death when I was able to help them. But now that I need help, where are they? So when that happens in our lives, and it happens in everybody's life in one way or another, then that love starts transitioning down that polarity towards hate.
Mm. 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 Excuse me. We're going to talk about fear and pain and external versus internal selves and the illusion of our internal selves. But I wanted Melki to kind of ask you to share a little bit about your particular belief system, because I know it's kind of possibly based in West Africa and Yoruba, et cetera. So maybe share a little bit about what's caused you to find solace and inspiration and guidance in that particular way.
Yeah, I came to it's a system called Ifa, and it is associated with the Yoruba people of Nigeria and formerly Benin, the old Benin, not the current Benin. But they were, and when we look at the map of Africa, it's just like we look at the map of America. These ancient civilizations, they were not states, nation states as they are now with these boundaries or whatever. These were kingdoms, and kingdoms, even in Europe, the kingdom, the Austro-Hungarian kingdom after World War I, all these different kingdoms changed. The creation of the state of Israel, all these areas changed over time, but it comes from that area of West Africa. But many people who study it believe that it is a system that emerged out of ancient Egypt. And because they say it came from the East, and there's a lot of similarities to it, but it is basically a system designed to what I say is correct errors. So it doesn't have the same judgmental aspect of the Judeo-Christian belief systems, whether Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, because Islam comes up out of that Judeo-Christian belief system because they're the same prophets, same the same father, Abraham.
Abraham. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they come up out of the same Judeo-Christian belief system, but Ifa talks about the fact that, that we are having a physical experience. We exist in heaven. We come to the earth for a physical experience, and we come here for a purpose. So, and what we call purpose, that's our destiny. And the thing that dictates your destiny, that keeps you on track, is what we call your ore. And the ore is your head. So that's in the head is really similar to, some people say, the soul, but it's the guiding light that takes you to your destiny with what we call Iwa Pele. Iwa Pele is gentle character. So you are to attain your destiny, because you could attain your destiny and you can just run, a rap shot rugged over everybody and get to your destiny. But the point is being able to attain your destiny with gentle character. And so it doesn't contain the Judeo-Christian system of good and evil. Those things don't really exist. What really exists, like heaven and hell, that doesn't really exist. What exists is whether or not you attain your destiny. And there exist forces similar to angels that exist, emanations, as we call it, emanations from the all, or emanations from what they call their supreme deity, Oludumare. And you have different, orishas that exist designed here to help us navigate. Now, these orishas can also be looked at internally, the same way we look at a chakra system associated with different colors and different energies that are, within the body. So it's external, but it's also internal. And most importantly, though, which we don't get this, because, starting off as a Christian, growing up in New Haven, and then moving on to Islam, Egyptology, Buddhism, the beliefs, and I did ancestry DNA, so the largest percentage of my ancestry is from Nigeria. So it's ironic that the belief system that my ancestors came here with, the closest belief system to me before we were converted to Judeo-Christianity, was the Ifa system. And yet it was the farthest away philosophically from where I was as a Christian, because we were taught to be afraid of it. But interesting, though, I'll say this as the most interesting point I found about Ifa, because I'm pretty a scientific person, so I like to look at things scientifically. It's a system of divination. So that if you're facing a particular problem, you can go to a priest, what they call a Babalawo, a priest or someone, or you can do the divination yourself to determine what are the methods of actions you should take to correct the energy. So if you're facing different particular problems, you can divine on it, and it provides you a solution. And that's why I say it's an error correcting belief system. It provides you a solution. But this divination system is based on 256 what they call odus, and odus are merely stories. And if you read Joseph Campbell, then you understand the value of stories and how they work in terms of mythology and work towards explaining life. So you have 256, and they're broken down in a system that is a binary system. There's a math that exists. When we came up, they taught us that, okay, this is the only form of math, multiplication, 2 times 2. But I found out that there was a math out of Africa, and particularly in East Africa, that they drew in the sand, and it was a binary code mathematical system. And it was amazing because, like, we were taught our whole lives that the only way you can do multiplication is this way. And they had a whole system from Africa that was totally different, that is very similar to the Ifa system of divination. Not only that, it can be converted to binary code, the same code you use to program computers. So this is what was hidden in the African teachings, that we didn't get any of it.
Right.
Our own genius was hidden in the system, because that's the traditional way of Africans. If you look at the people like Ron Eglash and the studies that he's done, and they found out that African villages were built along fractals.
Mm-hmm.
So our knowledge was, as opposed to the European version where everything is made seem hard, math is made to seem hard. Our lessons and wisdom were built into the system that we practice daily. And that is the African genius, that's the Black genius, that's the Black excellence that is so often hid, from us on a daily basis. So that's why Ifa appeals to me. Once I began to study it and see the history, see that there's a direct connection physically to my ancestors, that those are my people, then it I thought it was an amazing discovery based on all the disinformation I was given, because we know how Hollywood portrays African religions. It's hoodoo, it's voodoo, is all this evil stuff that has nothing to do, with the belief system. So and the fact that it provided practical, support for our daily lives, the problems you're facing. Like, I can get an answer today. Is this in my best interest to do this or to do that? And I'm hearing directly from my ancestors. So,
Melki and Malik, talk to me about your transformation and journey thus far. And again, let it be clear that it hasn't ended. It's in some ways just renews itself each day. But some folks call you Malik, some folks call you Melki. I'm curious about how you made the selections. Then you have JK, some middle initials. My mind goes to, if I mention Lou Alcindor, some people will say who. If I say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, they'll recognize who I'm talking about. Or if I say Don L. Lee, they'll say who. And then if I say hockey, they'll know who that is. Or even Stokely Carmichael, and then people will say, okay, who's that? But then Kwame Ture. So just kind of curious about your personal decision to kind of, and it's not a big gap between Melki and Malik, but I'm just curious about that.
Right. Melki is a version of Malik, because Malik or Malik, the Arabic pronunciation, most people associate that with meaning ruler or king. But the true meaning of Malik or Malik is messenger. So this is what they call the angels, messengers. They were communicators. They were emanations from the Most High. So that's what Malik truly means. And Melki is the same thing, but Melki is short for one of those angels, Melchizedek or Melchizedek. So Melki is just short for that, which is the angel of justice. And as you notice throughout my career, I've worked with a number of justice organizations. I worked for social justice. But I kind of lean on the root word, which is messenger, which as a writer and a communicator, that's what I am. And contrary to popular belief, if you study the Judeo-Christian versions, the angels or angelic beings, they didn't come with wings. They came they looked like human beings. That's how they were reported in the scriptures. So because people didn't know whether or not they were angels all the time. So they were just messengers from the Most High. So those names are connected together. I was, the JK comes from my name I was given by my mother, as named after one of my uncles from North Carolina. And that's the name that a lot of people I grew up with know me as. And so that, that's kind of where that came into being. But I also noticed that there was a pseudonym that the author that the Harry Potter author, that did, and I said, well, wow, the symbolism.
J.K. Rowling, yes,
right, which is the name I was born with, which is Jeffrey, which is J.K.R. So it's the same. It's you can call that metaphysics, that I was destined to be a writer. There was no doubt about it, even though I did not see it. So, so. And in African traditions, more so, you're constantly getting new names. You might be born on a name. If you're from Ghana, you might be born on a Wednesday. Your name might be Kwaku. based on and then you might have a name you're born with, and then you might do something of note and you pick up another name. So and it's the same way with belief systems, where the Africans put one belief system on top of another. This is why when they came to the New World in other countries, it was called syncretization, where they placed, their system of belief, the Orishas and Ifa system, inside of the Catholic system that, the enslavers were were forcing them to convert. So that's kind of where the names started. At they didn't really, and I took the name Malik because when I just graduated from Brandeis, and I was in Boston working, and I started writing letters to the editor of the Boston Globe, and they would never publish any of them. And I wrote a letter and I signed it Malik Shabazz. As we know, Malik Shabazz is, the former name of Malcolm X.
Yes, El Haj Malik Shabazz.
So, and they published it. I didn't even understand all the kind of, all the symbolism. Okay, I'm in Boston and I'm publishing under Malik's, but they published a letter, and that was like, I was like, wow, okay, and this is the name that I'm going to write under. And when I first got to DC and started working with the Afro, that was the name I was published under. And so it's been a journey, but I'm not sure this is the case with every writer, but me working as, a journalist and an activist, and then when I started to write fiction, I was like, I couldn't write. I wanted to keep those lives separate. So I didn't want my fiction to interfere with, my professional life, because I'm working with, leaders around the country. I'm working with elected officials. I'm working with politicians, whatever. But under fiction, I could have more freedom in terms of, what I was saying. And part of that journey was, and that's what caused me to write 21 Hustle, because I started in the 90s when I was a writer at the Afro-American newspaper. I had this gentleman came in, and this gentleman was, he was a former member of the Nation of Islam, and he was one of the earliest members from like the 30s or 40s. And I had him come in, I had some other people come in, and they started telling me different things, and that were like shocking, just about the history of the world. As we know, the history of the Black community, the history of the Black struggle. And I was like, okay, I gotta write this stuff.
But share with folks, but certainly today's show is designed, I'll lay my cards on the table to kind of tease people to kind of consider really taking advantage of the wisdom that you've been so freely giving people in terms of the YOU, the Youniverse by Melki J.K. Russell on Amazon. And you mentioned one other book, but mentioned the 2 or 3 other, or I think maybe 4 actually, but all the books that you've been involved with, that the Spirit has guided you to produce.
Yeah, Infinite Everyday Understanding. And folks want to learn more, you can visit my site, anewwordmedia.com. And you can also find my books. I have a page on Amazon, and they're all available. But early on, I have some very interesting stories from my experience in DC. And I just came across a certain level of knowledge. And as I started writing it, I realized that I could not publish it the way that it was, because it was just, it was stuff that would have, caused a lot of issues for a lot of people.
Well, your FBI file is already pretty thick, so I mean, they just add on to it. They can find some more.
Well, it wasn't more so worried about that. It was more so about the impact it would have on the Black community. And so, I said, I have to write this. A different way, And one of the stories that I don't even have in my books, like when I was in DC and I worked with the Afro, I used to take the phone calls from Marion Barry when Marion Barry was locked up, in prison, and he would call the Afro every week, and we would run a column on him. and I used to take those phone calls from Mayor Barry and write a column for him. But
well, that sounds like a third show because you're talking because you were talking. I haven't done a show on uh, the gentleman in Philadelphia that's a former Black Panther and been incarcerated for
Mumia, yeah,
I haven't done a show on Mumia Abu Jamal in a while. So that sounds like a third show. I want to talk, Malik, about fear and pain and external versus internal selves before we have about 10 more minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So let's jump into fear and pain. And I'm really glad you intersected that. We started off talking about reality, but also the way that you've been interject that it's really not a plain vanilla discussion that we've been having. It does pertain to our liberation struggle. So I want people to kind of digest at least part of this show, kind of check out your books and just understand the connection between what we call liberation and freedom in a general political activist standpoint, and the underpinnings of what that means, short and long term. But fear and pain. Share with me a little bit about that, because I love the way that you juxtapose these.
Right. And what I should have added, the third one I should have added was anger. So
okay, let's jump to anger first, because we have about 10 minutes. Let's jump to anger first.
Well, fear, pain, and anger, those are emotions, and when they happen, they're real because we experience them. So as our world is swirling about us and things are happening, we know when we want to grab a lifeline, we want to grab the quickest one near us. And so we reach out and we can grab fear, we can grab pain, we can grab anger, because those are real, in our lifeline, whether or not, they still make sense to us anymore. They're like I said in the book, they're that old friend that we know that when we want to go the wrong way, or we want to hang out, we want to go get drunk, we know who to call.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Sometimes it's your default. Sometimes it's your default system.
Yeah, fear, pain, and anger. They're sitting there. That's that good friend that will show up all the time and take you to all the clubs you shouldn't be going to, and get you all the drink. They'll pay for the drinks, everything. So, we know our lower self that, those are things that we can hold on to, and they're easy to grip when we don't want to, deal with the reality or really the illusion, because the sense of reality is, that we know, is really an illusion. So those are things that we hold on to, and like I talk about in the book, like we hold on to, drinking. Like people talk about therapy, but decades ago, therapy for men was to go have some drinks, go to a bar, and get into a fight.
In the bottle. The therapy was in the bottle. Mm-hmm.
That was the the therapy. So what happens when you finally realize that, okay, fear, pain, and anger are not getting me what I want.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting me to where I want to go. And so I'm going to try another route. But then what happens when, like I said before, you're sitting there and you're like, well, I used to drink this amount after dinner, and then I would watch the NBA channel, before I fall asleep. And it's like, now I'm not drinking. Now the NBA channel is more of a distraction. So what do I do? And as I say in the book, maybe I decide to fix that hole in the roof that's been, dripping water on me for the past 2 weeks. So once you move away, these are all distractions.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this because when I was writing the Youniverse, and I was writing Infinite Everyday Understanding, I was working at Morgan State University as a professor, and then I had to leave there, so I left, and I had this bunch of time available, and I was unemployed, and I was slowly all the distractions I had were being removed. My car was being removed, my cable was being removed. And then so now I'm like, okay, what the hell am I going to do now? All the distractions I had built up. So once I got to a point where it's like, okay, well, I don't have any money. I don't have a car. I can't do it. There's nothing I can really do. I said, well, why don't I write a book? So, that was part of the purpose, but going through that, and the universe was teaching me through that process, okay, this is what distractions are. All these things that we use to keep us from dealing with the things that we want to deal with. And fear, pain, and anger play a big place in maintaining those distractions, serving as excuses, serving as that ride or die that shows up your doorstep with a bottle of Henny, hey, I'm here, whatever you need, So those are all distractions that keep us from doing the things that we're meant to do, the things that are really, good for us. But it's like waking up out of a fog. You can't really see what is really before you until you wake up out of the fog, and you can't get out of the fog until we learn to let go of that pain that we're using, that fear, that anger, because those are the easiest things to grab onto. When we're struggling, when we're experiencing life's bad times. And so that's why I talk about that, and the need, for us to be able to move on, because a lot of it, like I said before, is about judgment. It's about us judging ourselves and judging others, and making a determination that I'm experiencing these things because the universe, because God is judging me, as opposed to, no, I came here, I manifested on this earth to learn. These are a part of the curriculum. These are a part of the curriculum, these different experiences that once you go through, it was like me when I was, writing the universe, and I was somewhere in California, whatever. I was in a record store or something, and some guy came up and started asking me these questions, and I was like really dismissive. I was like, yo, just like, I don't work here, dude. Go ask the people. But at the same time, here I am, in a point where I'm struggling, and I'm asking the universe to intervene. I'm asking the universe to have mercy on me. And I realized you can't really ask from the universe what you're not willing to give. You want mercy, you want compassion, but you don't give it.
We have about another 60 seconds.
Yeah, and so it's and that's why it's a reflective, interactive world. So, because you might think that you're the best person in the world, but what does your energy say? What does the consciousness say? Because the world only sees the energy and the consciousness. And so the world looking at me at that point was like, okay, dude, you're really dismissive and really kind of rude. That's what it sees. That's, so it doesn't know all the other things you've done and whatever. It just knows how you're operating at this particular point right now. And so it's important for us to be able to look in the mirror and say, am I giving to the world the things that I want in return from the world?
I'm gonna give you a chance to say that again, and then Harry, we're gonna sign off. But I guess repeat that again about your intentions and
sure. Yeah,
and actually loving yourself and loving the universe.
Right. Am I giving to the world the things that I want in return from the universe? And this is why I avoid judgment, because we are the toughest. Not only can we not judge ourselves, we're going to do it inaccurately, but when we do, we are the most critical of ourselves. We're worse than anybody else. We're judging ourselves, but yet we have mercy for our cousin, for our friend, but we don't have no mercy for ourselves. We're brutal and critical and nonstop in the way we pick apart ourselves. So once again, what are we giving to the universe? What are we giving to ourselves, that we want in return? So I tell people that's why you are the most important person in the world. Start with yourself. Forgive yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be compassionate to yourself, and start there, and then work outwards.
Excellent. And it's just not a sprint, not a marathon, but it's a daily walk. So Melki, thank you so much, man. We'll have to do part three. Just touching base. Glad to know that you're moving on and looking and envisioning and manifesting new desires and being proactive. Stay healthy, stay well. This is the Tom Ficklin Show. Please check. Melki, people can reach you how again in terms of
Sure.
taking advantage of your wisdom?
You can reach me on Twitter at Melki J. Russell. You can reach me on LinkedIn and visit my site, anewwordmedia.com.
Excellent. Melki, thanks so much, man. Over and out. Until then.
Peace.
Understand what black is. The source from which all things come. The security blanket for the stars. Understand what black is. It's not a color, it's the basis of all colors. It is not a complexion, it is a reflection of all complexions called human. And out of this blackness, passion flows like a river. Feelings tell the truth. Song and dance and making you laugh